Struggling to tell the story of Pagiel. It's not a story about Pagiel, but it's Pagiel's story about God. It's a story of God redeeming a young man in a supernatural way. It's a story that's really hit home personal with me for a number of reasons, and I still haven't wrapped my mind around it. Some of the truth of what I've learned here is so stupidly obvious. It's what God's told us all along. You know, this idea of redemption. It's all God. It's just all God. And I just don't even know what other words to use. God chose this young man, and it's been obvious since he was a child. He was an unusual child in a lot of ways. And everybody who would have met him and have known him, even as a youngster, I said, there's something special about Pagiel. Something unusual about Pagiel. He's smart, he's witty, he's fun. But you know, sometimes there's just something about a person and you just can't put your finger on it. I guess that's God too. There's something in the supernatural, something in the spirit that's sweet, or it's intangible. It's not something you can say, I know what it is. It's not that simple. Sweet child? No question. Unusually intelligent? Yeah, but I've met unusually intelligent people before. Witty, fun, but there's that something else. And at least so far, I can't put a name on it. I expect I probably never will. Comes from a dysfunctional home. Family. This home you see behind me is where he lives now, and has for the last couple of years. But his home life as a child was unstable. Parents that didn't get along, mother and father out of various relationships, unhealthy and, sorry, I just got hit by a walnut. Unhealthy in many, many ways. And in some ways, I suppose that defined him. You know, youngsters that grew up in a bumpy home, they gain coping mechanisms and escapes and things like that. But it's more than that. It's more than that. But somehow early in his life, 7, 8, 9 years old, he was kind of a whiz at video games and computers and things of the sort, and started playing around with a lot of things like that, and nothing wrong with that. But he was already searching for something deeper in life, something more significant, spiritual, I suppose. He knew about God. He went to church occasionally. Relationship with God? I don't know. How do you define that, maybe? It's not always that clear. But certainly knew God. At some point even had given his life to God in a profession, if you will, of faith. But it didn't change his home life. It didn't change the pain that he endured from day to day and never really expressed. It didn't change the fact that his mother and father didn't like each other much and didn't have good things to say about each other. Didn't change much of anything, I suppose. So he continued to search. And one day in playing video games, he noticed a little advertisement for, or a little snippet or something online. Something Wiccan, maybe. Witchcraft, magic. It's just for fun, right? Doesn't hurt anybody. And he got involved. And he started playing around with it. He started learning what he could, and being an intelligent young man, he learned fast. And being that he was seeking for something that he couldn't find tangible, maybe he found it. And as the months went on and the years went on, he became more obsessed with this lifestyle, to the point of even casting spells, real things that actually worked. Makes me quiver just to sit here and talk about it. The demonic world is not something to be toyed with, folks. It's every bit as real as us sitting here now. But time went on and he developed a character. I'll talk to him more about this tomorrow, but a character from some comic book or cartoon or something, a rather evil character. He started kind of feeling like he wanted to be more like that character. He wanted to take on his persona, his looks, his voice. And he really did. But more than that, he began hearing voices that would tell him what to do, how to dress, how to act, what to say. And he followed those voices. They were helpful, after all. And then with time, those voices began to turn on him. You're no good. You're trash. You're hated. You're ugly. You're schizophrenic. You're a freak. Just get it over with. Be done with it. End it all. He listened to the voice. He didn't know what else to do. As a 14-year-old boy, he'd already found a girl who was almost 15 years older than him, who he thought he was in love with. And he'd never see her again because they were forbidden from seeing each other. The voice even told him, "You can see her in heaven." So one rainy night in October, he heard the voice in his sleep. Got out of bed. The voice told him, "Don't go through the front door. Your mom will hear the door squeak." He says, "I don't want it to hurt." The voice says, "Use a gun. It won't hurt. It's fast." He said, "I don't have a gun." And the voice told him exactly where to find it. It had been moved to the glove box of the car, hidden away in the car. He climbed out his bedroom window in the rain, made his way to the car, and then made his way down to this barn that's behind me. We don't know the details. Pagiel can't possibly remember. He remembers more than most people would. But he went down into that hay barn, sat down on a bale of hay and leaned up against a 100-year-old timber, put the gun to the right side of his head, and pulled the trigger. And he will tell you he remembers this much. Just as he pulled the trigger, a hand grabbed his hand and pulled it away. The bullet still passed through the frontal lobe of his brain and ejected his eyeball, and he lost his sight. Both eyes. Pagiel's alive today. His mother found him. Laying in a heap on the floor. In the dark. In the rain. He wanted to live. He wanted to live. The next few months of their life was a blur. And I won't tell you that everything changed that night. But everything began to change that night. And maybe it did. In a flash. In the flash of a gunshot. God transformed Pagiel and Bethany. But more than that, God won out over the demons. God kicked their butts out of the barn. Pagiel's a different boy today. He's a goofball. He's an interesting boy. He's still got his wit and smarts and intelligence and that little something that you can't put your finger on. He's blind. Probably always will be. But he's got a story to tell you about the redemption of God. And not once have I heard Bethany or Pagiel say, well, it was because of our circumstances, or it was because of our marriage, or it was because of... Not once. Not even a hint that it was anybody's fault. God did this. The demons, yes. But God transformed a hurting, oppressed young man listening to voices of demons into a man who's praising God with every cell in his body. I've never seen anything like it. Got a story to tell. It's a story about God. That's all I've got. It's a story about God.